Hey, what's up, YouTube? It's Richie from Boston. Today's the 24th of June, 2017, and what you are looking at is a video I put up back on May 13th. Now, I covered this ad nauseum. A lot of people really understood what it is I was trying to say, but a lot of people are fanboys, or they're basically hypnotized by science, and that's exactly what science does. And I want to explain to you exactly where science comes from and who it is that you are worshiping without even understanding it. I'm going to give you all the proof you need, then you can make up your own mind. But listen to this. Sigils. Here follows a list of several demons and their sigils of summoning. So this is how the seriously misguided people protect themselves in their minds and try to get hold of what they probably think are angels or dark forces. I don't know. But if you look down right here, LM, and see the sign right there, well, it's frighteningly close to the CERN symbol. Now, this video, what I was talking about, it was called Demonic Sigils and Eyes in the Sky. What I was talking about is how the entire list of sigils, symbols, things you would use to raise a demon or contact through a conduit an other dimensional being or a fallen angel is exactly what science is. And a lot of people just couldn't wrap their minds around it. A lot of people could wrap their minds around it. You see what I'm saying? But I'm going to bolster this entire argument and show you where NASA comes from specifically. Let's start with John Dee, okay? And I know let's just look at what Wikipedia has to say. John Dee, 13th of July, 1527 to 1608 or 1609, was an English mathematician, astronomer, astrologer, occult philosopher, and advisor to Queen Elizabeth. He devoted much of his life to the study of alchemy, divination, or Hermetic philosophy, and was an advocate of England's imperial expansion into the British Empire, a term he was generally crediting with coining. Now, John Dee was looked up to by very many people for his work in science, but the things that they play down are lots of things like this, for instance, John Dee's spirit mirror. This black spirit mirror and other magical objects are what are thought to have been owned by John Dee, the Elizabethan magician, astrologer, and mathematician. The mirror was used as a shoe stone or one of many polished and lustrous things used by Dee to carry out his occult research into the world of spirits. Dee worked with the medium and convicted criminal Edward Kelly to summon visions of angels in the mirror's reflective surface. The two men held seances in England and on the continent between 1583 and 1589. And he was also the Queen. The Queen went to him for her advice on science and other things otherworldly. But he is one of the founders of what people consider as science right now. Now, these people, guys like John Dee, guys like Isaac Newton, guys like Benjamin Franklin, these are the ones that gave us all this symbology, which lays over into electricity, electrical circuitry, conduits, mediums, everything, almost perfectly. I mean, it's absolutely staggering to me. But it continues to go on. Let's look at some other heroes of the science and rocketry world, shall we? Sir Isaac Newton. This guy allegedly saw an apple fall from a tree and came up with the theory of gravity. Now, for you, those of you that follow NASA, those of you that are just absolutely confounded at why anyone would think something sinister is coming from CERN, gravity is something they talk about as though it's a proven fact, when in fact it's not. It couldn't be any further from the truth. Gravity is probably the electromagnetism of the earth that holds everyone down according to their own body size and mass and all the minerals and so forth and so on. But on that, I digress. Let's listen to a top physicist explain gravity.
You have no idea. Okay.
What is gravity?
You have no idea. Okay, next question.
Wow.
No, here's the difference. We can describe gravity. We can say what it does to other things. We can measure it, predict with it. But when you start asking, like, what it is, I don't know.
So
it
did
is.
I accidentally ask a deeper question than I meant to?
Yeah, no, you were meant to ask deep questions.
Apparently I was.
So this is our newest iteration. So from Sir Isaac Newton all the way up to Neil deGrasse Tyson, nobody can still explain what gravity is, except it's still taught as though and still thought of as though it's a fact. Let's look into Sir Isaac Newton's esoteric background, shall we? Let's just take this article real quick from the Daily Mail from the UK on Sir Isaac Newton and his obsession with the occult. He laid the foundations of classical physics and is considered to be one of the greatest scientists of all time. But Isaac Newton was deeply interested in the occult and applied a scientific approach to the study of scripture and Jewish mysticism. Jewish mysticism. What is that, you think? Exactly. The Kabbalah. You know, the thing that Hollywood tried for a long time, led by Madonna and Britney Spears and all these other wacko sellout Illuminati puppets. The Kabbalah. But again, on that, I digress. Now, Israel's National Library, which contains a vast trove of Newton's esoteric writings, has digitized his occult collection and posted it online. Among the yellow text in Newton's famous prediction of the apocalypse in 2060, the quintessential scientist, Newton revolutionized the approach to physics, math, and astronomy in the 17th and 18th century. He laid the foundations for most classical mechanics, including the principle of universal gravitation and the three laws of motion which bear his names. But they don't mention all the things that he came up with that are still thought of as laws today cannot be explained by modern theoretical physicists that are actually just actors, but still they cannot be explained. And back to John Dee. According to this article, he was a deep spirit and he studied and practiced astrology, Rosicrucian, and Hermetic theories. He studied the Hebrew language, the Talmud, and the Kabbalah, and practiced alchemy, hoping to find the elixir of eternal life. These are the roots. These are the brass tacks roots of what science is today. Period. There's no two ways around it. Go back to every single book. If you read through all the rigmarole, all the nonsensical, unbelievably complicated wordings, you will find everything goes back to the Talmud and the Kabbalah. Now, what do the Talmud and the Kabbalah have to say? Let's take a look at some of these Talmudic quotes. I've gone over these before, but let's do it again. The decisions of the Talmuds are words of the living God, Jehovah himself. Ask the opinions of earthly rabbis when there are difficult affairs in heaven. A heathen who studies the Torah deserves death, for it is written, Moses commanded us a law for an inheritance. Is it our inheritance? It is our inheritance, not theirs. Then why is it not included in the Noachian laws, or reading Morashah, an inheritance he steals it? To communicate anything to a Goy about our religious relations would be equal to the killing of all Jews. For if the Goyim knew what we teach about them, they would kill us openly. That is the Sanhedrin 59a. A Jew should and must make a false oath when the Goyim ask if our books contain anything against them. So it's openly telling them in Libra David 37 to lie. We beg thee, O Lord, indict thy wrath on the nations not believing in thee and not calling on thy name. Let down thy wrath on them, inflict them with thy wrath. Drive them away in thy wrath and crush them into pieces. And it goes on and on and on and on. It compares raping of a 3-year-old girl as to simply poking her in the eye because it makes no difference. And it goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And all of these people that came up with these laws of physics like gravity that still never once ever at all been proven, they all lean back on this. People like this, but let's go a little bit more modern, shall we? Now, the main problem that scientific people have with me is that I go after NASA an awful lot because NASA is making themselves an everyday word. Every single solitary time you turn around, NASA's popping up, right down to the fact that they're going after some woman in Hollywood. What in the world does NASA have to do with Hollywood? Well, it turns out NASA has a lot to do with Hollywood because everything NASA puts forth is made in Hollywood. and the fact that the word Satan is directly in front of you. S-A-T-A-N. And then the forked tongue. Where did NASA come from? Where did Jet Propulsion's Lab, JPL, come from?
The whole thing is so incredible. The whole story is so amazing, so remarkable. This is Los Angeles. This is black magic. This is the founding of NASA, of Jet Propulsion Laboratories. What isn't in this story?
The craters and mountains of our moon bear the names of giants of science, figures like Archimedes, Kepler, and Copernicus. There is also a crater honoring someone called Jack Parsons. There are some who would rather he had been forgotten. Perhaps that's why his crater is on the dark side of the moon.
He was a maverick rocket scientist, okay? He was also a maverick rocket scientist spiritually.
This father of American rocketry was also an occultist, devoted to a path still widely misunderstood and feared.
So the founding of modern rocket science is absolutely allied and connected with black magic.
Only its detractors would call it black magic. For Parsons, this was his spiritual path, as it is for its initiates today.
The alchemy that John Dee, Isaac Newton, Jack Marvel Parsons, all engaged in, and this is everything that our current society is based on right now, whether they speak it openly or not, and it seems that they are doing it. It all runs back to Paracelsus and how to build yourself a homunculus, and this is where Jack Parsons, which is the roots of NASA, comes from.
The Hermetic and alchemical writings of Paracelsus, he said, quote, "But neither must we by any means forget the generation of homunculi, for there is some truth in this thing, although for a long time it was held in a most occult manner and with secrecy, while there was no little doubt and question among some of the old philosophers whether it was possible to nature and art that a man should be begotten without the female body and the natural womb. In order to accomplish it, you must proceed thus. Let the semen of a man putrefy by itself in a sealed cucurbite with the highest putrefaction until it begins to live, move, and be agitated, which can easily be seen. If now, after this, it be every day nourished and fed cautiously and prudently with the arcanum of human blood, and kept for 40 weeks in the perpetual and equal heat, it becomes, thenceforth, a true and living infant, having all the members of a child that is born from a woman, but much smaller. This we call a homunculus, and it should be afterwards educated with the greatest care and zeal until it grows up and begins to display intelligence. Now this is one of the greatest secrets which God has revealed to mortal and fallible man. It is a miracle and marvel of God, an arcanum above arcana, and deserves to be kept secret until the last times, when there shall be nothing hidden, but all things shall be made manifest. In more recent times, it was the pioneer rocket fuel scientist and occultist Jack Parsons and the founder of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, who performed magical ceremonies and rituals called Babylon working, carrying on the work done by occultist Aleister Crowley, who called himself the Great Beast 666. Parsons and Hubbard claimed to make contact with the spiritual realm to unleash an entity of a divine female named Babylon. But perhaps the most interesting part of all the rituals performed by Parsons and Hubbard was that of what is called the mannequin. The accounts of the mannequin begins with a huge steel container codenamed Jumbo that accompanied the first atomic bomb explosion on the Trinity site in New Mexico on July 16, 1945. The Brookings Institute released a short explanation of Jumbo in February of 2013, which stated, quote, "As preparations for the first nuclear weapons test, General Leslie Groves, the head of the Manhattan Project, began to worry about what would happen if the test was a failure. With a very limited supply of plutonium then available, a failure could scatter tens of millions of dollars of the precious element across the New Mexico desert. To avoid this problem, a massive steel vessel to contain the explosion was built at a cost of $142 million. Nicknamed Jumbo, the container weighed 214 tons, was 25 feet long, 12 feet wide, and had walls 14 inches thick. According to occult investigators and conspiracy theorists James Shelby Downard and William N. Grimstead, Jumbo contained within it what Aleister Crowley had called the mannequin, an inanimate body which was inundated with nuclear energy, thus producing a real homunculus, or golem. Regardless of whether or not the stories of these occult practices to produce soulless life forms are true or not, it doesn't make much difference with what we are facing on the horizon.
When you look around at today's society, NASA has interjected themselves everywhere. And NASA and JPL, Jet Propulsion's Lab, Jack Marvel Parsons more specifically, all of this is what's considered science, and it all goes back to what I'm showing you. So now when you look at the video that I put out, it makes a lot more sense. The videos exposing NASA, including my own, are endless. They just continue to go on and on and on and on. Everything that science is based on goes back to two things: esoteric and the Talmud and the Kabbalah. So I guess it's three things. This is what these people believe. This is what science, this is what physics all ties back to. All the way back to John Dee, all the way back to Isaac Newton, and always to the Kabbalah. The reason NASA exists, the reason NASA is absolutely everywhere in today's society, is for one thing and for one thing only. First of all, it denies God. It hides God from the masses, because if there was a God, how could people go into outer space and find all these other planets that are so-called quote-unquote Goldilocks planets? NASA wants to be the head of the pack. NASA wants to be the go-to guy, and that explains why they're showing NASA in situations like this, which make absolutely zero to little sense, going after a Hollywood actress because she's selling some sort of a healing aid, and yet people still in the comments stick up for NASA as though it's correct, and it's not. Everything NASA done is done in a Hollywood stage, and there's no two ways about it. But with this background in mind, it makes a lot more sense when you look at things like I show to you, the sigils, the drawings to draw it, to summon a demon, an otherworldly person, what people think are angels, whatever. All of this ties into modern day electricity, and it explains the unbelievable meteoric rise of technology that is all around us at all times. Disease, disorders, medications, vaccines, fluoridation, genetically modified. People don't even care that the person that they think that they're voting for is lying to them because they're so dumbed down. There's a reason for this. Those of us that are Christian understand what the answer is. The end game is the long game. All of this is to bring back the Antichrist and to bring in Armageddon. Believe it or don't, but the information's there. Look for it honestly and openly, and you'll find it. Richie from Boston. Like, share, subscribe, or don't.